Society often talks about father wounds. We don't talk too much about what happens when a mother becomes abusive. There's this unconscious assumption that mothers are naturally nurturing. But what happens when a mother becomes the source of violence, shame, control, and emotional unpredictability, especially with her son? Hey everybody, I'm Mystic Brew, founder of Return to Self, where I help you remember who you were before the world taught you who to be. And this is another episode of Hot Girl Math, where we solve energetic equations. On this week's episode, we're going to touch on something that's a little provocative, perhaps a little uncomfortable, but it's really important to discuss, especially right now. And I was given that confirmation when a recent social media post went viral. So this is what happened. Recently, I posted a video on TikTok and Instagram where I was sharing a meme that I saw on social media, and it said this.
I just saw someone post, yeah, of course men like toxic women because they grew up with a mother who beat them and then said, I love you.
Now, as you can imagine, that's very provocative. It can be triggering. It's a lot. And I just want to be clear before I even go any further. I did get a lot of comments from people who were like, how is this funny? Why is this funny? It's not funny. And I understand why you would think that I was laughing at the end. That wasn't a ha-ha laugh. That was an oh shit laugh. That was a gut punch laugh. That was a whoever said this and wrote this like really got to the point in a kind of way. But I understand why some of you, especially if you don't know me and don't know my work, would assume that I was laughing. That's not something I would ever laugh about. Now, given the response to that, which I did post a follow-up TikTok where I was very emotional.
Well, a bunch of men on the internet made me cry today.
Because the comments were so many men sharing how this was their experience or how their mothers never even told them I love you, or that they need to start drinking because all of these memories and these feelings are now coming up again. And as someone who has been working in the wellness space for so many years and also used to focus on love and dating for over a decade, this is a conversation that has come up a lot. And it's one that I really want to have right now because what we are seeing collectively, and I've touched on this in previous episodes, is a deep need to face the mother wound that is coming up for each of us individually and collectively. Obviously, this is not just for men. We all can have a mother wound, doesn't matter how you identify, but for this video, I want to focus on men. And the reason I want to focus on men is it feels like we don't take enough intentional space to dig into the pain and suffering and how it affects men. And that's an important conversation because there is a lot of harm and violence in this world because of men. And if we want to cure that, we need to get to the root of the problem: neglect, shame, violence, and a deep hole within the heart. And unfortunately, sometimes it starts with mom. I also don't believe in coincidences, so you know everything in divine timing, everything is hot girl math, cosmically aligned. And I do find it funny that this is coming up on the 18th episode of Hot Girl Math because 18 is the moon in tarot, and the moon card in tarot talks about the mother. So again, we can talk about women and their mother wounds on another episode, but today we're going to focus on men. And I do have some notes here from some research about how this can really affect young boys and the relationships they then get into as grown men. So we're going to talk about this energy, and I also want to share 8 signs of how the mother wound can show up in men as they get older. Now, again, in that video, it was very succinct to the point where it was a little uncomfortable, but at the same time, there was truth there. There was truth there, and I know there was truth there because of the response that it got from so many men. And something we need to realize is that when a young boy is repeatedly harmed by the person who is either biologically and or psychologically wired to make him feel safe while simultaneously being told, I love you, The nervous system is now internalizing a very dangerous equation. Love equals unpredictability plus pain plus emotional instability plus caretaking the person who hurt me. And then this oftentimes unconsciously affects his romantic relationships and views of intimacy later on in his life. There's lots of psychological information that also align with this type of energy. You may have heard of John Bowlby's attachment theory. That was like a huge thing during the pandemic. I don't know if you were part of that wave, but we learned a lot about the different attachment styles: secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant, and then disorganized or fearful avoidant. This is when our earliest caregiver relationships create the template for our future relationships. That's why you often hear that you're not dating your partner, you're dating your parent. It's almost like you seek out that same energy, that same dynamic, energetic experience, sometimes so that you can show up differently in an environment where you feel safer to do so than you would in the past with a parent, or because it's familiar, even if it's not healthy. Now, this can get into trauma bonding as well. This is intermittent affection mixed with harm that creates a stronger psychological attachment, not a weaker one. And then this can also create cognitive dissonance. This person hurts me, but I depend on them. Therefore, hurting me must be part of love. It also touches on object relations theory, which is when the child internalizes distorted models of themselves and others. So a child can't just conclude, oh, my mom's unsafe, because their survival depends on the attachment to the mother. And because that survival depends on the attachment, the child can often instead conclude something about me makes me deserving of unsafe love. And that becomes the identity. And I've touched on this in the past. It's this idea of control as well. As a child, you don't have much control because your survival is dependent on this person. So as a coping mechanism, you sort of reverse the energy and make it about you, because then you feel like you have a little bit of control. So again, instead of being able to understand, oh, mom's unsafe, it is, oh, there's something about me that apparently deserves this type of love. And if that root starts to really take ground from a deep place at a young age unconsciously, and you keep watering that idea, that narrative, then it will sprout and it will become its own thing throughout your life in different relationships, because that is what you unconsciously believe to be true about yourself. And this is something that I've experienced in relationships that I've been in. And again, please, you guys, I get it. Women have mother wounds. We have father wounds. We talk about daddy issues all the freaking time. And I've often said that you'll do your daddy work, like the father wound stuff, and you think you're good. You think you got it. And then all of a sudden, boom, there comes mom with all of the unconscious material. Because again, the mother is the moon, the unconscious, what's hidden in the dark. So unless you consciously become aware of these habits, which with the mother is oftentimes correlated to how you receive love, then you'll keep going through this loop without realizing that it's actually an unconscious habit because of an unconscious narrative or belief about yourself and what love looks like. So when I had my dating experiences with some men that seemed to be exhibiting some of these things, I noticed something that was a bit concerning, and that was it just felt like they didn't see me and they didn't want me around or care about me unless I was volatile with them. It was like there was a level of constantly poking at me and trying to trigger me and push my buttons to bring that side of me out. Now, again, there's shadow work on my end with that as well. I needed to know she existed. I needed to know she was there so that I could also alchemize and transmute that energy. But the pattern on the other end was that you only know how to coexist in closeness, in relationship with a woman when it's that energy. And I am someone who does not care to be in that energy. I can be, trust me. I can be. She is alive and well. But part of my work that I've been really intentional about is learning how to regulate my emotions, learning how to not react impulsively, and learning how to not become so emotional in situations that don't require that level of a response. And so when I'm with someone who can only be close to me, create connection with me, if I am that woman, I don't want to be there. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's not a relationship that I care to now keep investing energy into, because it's requiring a version of me I don't care to be. And so that would create a lot of hardship and obviously some separation within relationships, because I'm like, the type of woman that you want is not the type of woman I'm trying to be. And it's something I think about a lot as a woman who may become a mother, who may become a mother to a young boy. It's been very important to me to become aware of those unconscious habits, because one thing I know about myself is I've been carrying a lot of anger. And I don't want to take that out on my child. I've been very intentional about not going down the path of motherhood or even allowing myself to consider that as an option truly until I have done the work to really simmer that fire so that I don't burn innocent people around me that don't deserve that. So when I talk about this, I'm not coming from a place of judgment because of the men I've experienced. I want us to be aware of this, all of us, not just men, but the women too, because the women will become the mothers. Some of you already are mothers to young boys. And so it's so crucial and important that we are conscious of the ways that we are showing up for the young boys, because they will grow into the men who will either harm society or protect it. So let's get into the 8 ways that the mother wound can show up in men, starting with number 1, attraction to chaos in relationships. Calm and healthy relationships will feel boring. And why is that? Because the nervous system learned early that intensity is what equates to love. So the man might unconsciously seek women who are emotionally volatile, inconsistent, withholding affection, highly critical, or unpredictable. And that's because that dysfunction feels familiar. Not healthy, familiar. And I also just want to note, because there were some comments from men who were like, well, I like toxic women. I like women who speak their mind and have opinions and aren't afraid to share. That's not toxic, buddy. That's just being a person. And it's kind of telling and concerning that men would equate that to toxicity. Oh, she has a personality and things to say. Anyway, that's not toxicity. Toxicity is abusive behavior, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse. And speaking of that, number 2, confusing abuse with passion. If love was paired with humiliation, yelling, manipulation, or physical punishment early on, later in life, he may unconsciously read emotional volatility as chemistry. So examples of this are jealousy that's interpreted as care, controlling behavior that's interpreted as devotion, emotional instability that's interpreted as passion. And the nervous system recognizes suffering as intimacy. And a lot of us have been fed this limiting belief that passion is this all-consuming, sort of like crazy type of love. And we need to break that narrative. You can have passion without having abuse. And what we are still learning is that abuse is not just physical. There's this limiting idea that the only abuse that is credible is the abuse that you can see. But the abuse that you cannot see is usually the most harmful because its roots are so deep and it is continuously running in the background without anybody's awareness. Number 3, a low sense of self-worth. If the mother was emotionally abusive, critical, neglectful, or impossible to please, then the young boy develops this belief that he's only lovable when he performs correctly. It's this conditional love. And so this can create perfectionism, deep shame, a fear of failure, chronic self-abandonment, and an inability to advocate for his needs. His identity, because the love was conditional, also becomes conditional. And this is where the mask comes in. This is where the performer comes in. This is the representative. And again, we see this in relationships when you date these men. You get the representative. He tries to show up as like the Prince Charming knight in shining armor. And then as soon as that mask is starting to fall off or you start to see beyond the performance, he will either self-sabotage because he's afraid of you seeing his true self because he learned that his true self was not deserving of love. And so therefore the thought pattern is, oh, well, they can't see this part of me because I already learned that this part of me is unlovable. And so if I show them this part of me, they're going to leave. Is that the truth? Not always. It depends on the person and the relationship and what's going on there. But it's also this idea that perpetuates constantly sabotaging or leaving relationships the second they become afraid of being vulnerable, which is required to establish intimacy. And in order to be vulnerable, you have to be transparent. You have to be authentic. Otherwise, it's a charade and no one can hold up a performance for that long. It's exhausting. Your body will start to shut down. You will get annoyed and irritable because you know it's like, I can't even be myself. I always have to be on. No one's asking you to do that. You're doing it because you were taught that that's how you have to be loved. That is not the truth. Number 4, emotional repression. Boys are often socialized not to express vulnerability. And so now add a mother wound to this, especially a mother who punishes emotional expression, and the lesson becomes, oh, my feelings are dangerous. This can then create men who struggle with identifying their emotions, who shut down during conflict, who avoid vulnerability, who numb either with sex, with work, with substances. Addiction is a huge thing with this, and distraction. Or they intellectually analyze instead of just feeling what they're feeling because they were taught that emotional truth creates punishment. Number 5, the savior complex or overfunctioning. If mom was unstable, then the child often learns my job is to emotionally regulate the adults around me. And so as an adult, this can then show up as dating women that they need to rescue, over caretaking, attracting emotionally unavailable partners, believing love must be earned through sacrifice. And this becomes relational working environments or like a relational working employee instead of relational participants. And even then you can sense that there is a sort of hierarchy and a power dynamic happening even unintentionally or unconsciously. It's like, oh, I am on this level. I must take care of you. I must do this for you. I must care for you. And so automatically you're not seeing eye to eye because you've placed yourself in a position no one asked you to be in. And also, if you're a woman listening to this right now and you're like, this is ringing a bell for me. Yeah, same. Because again, this isn't just about the mother wound in men. As a woman, you can experience this with your mother as well. However, with men, it feels especially important at this time because I will say that there's a lot of men that I'm noticing right now who are feeling that deep call to do the healing work, to dive deeper into why they show up the way that they do, why they choose the partners that they do, what is getting in the way of experiencing the life that they truly want, how to healthily deal with the pain and suffering that they've been carrying silently for so long, how to break the addictions that are ruining their lives. And I love to see it. I love to see it because the more we heal, the more we're able to love and cohabitate in harmony. And so that's why we're focusing on the men. But obviously, as women, you may notice this within your life too. Number 6, a fear of healthy women. Now, this one's really interesting because it's kind of a paradox. A woman who has boundaries, emotional regulation, direct communication, consistency, and self-respect may actually feel threatening to him. And obviously, it's not because she's unhealthy, it's because she doesn't activate that childhood blueprint that he's used to having activated in close relationships. And so that healthy intimacy can feel foreign, and because it feels foreign, it can feel unsafe. So do you see the paradox there? It's like whatever's familiar feels safe, but if what's familiar is actually unhealthy and unsafe, what's actually safe can feel unsafe because you don't know it. You cling to what you know. That level of predictability feels safe. But again, that's where you have to come in and be like, okay, yeah, I know this energy, but is this what I want? Is this what I need? Is this healthy? Or am I just afraid of now having to show up in an environment where I don't know how to show up? I don't know who I am here. I don't know how to move with this because I'm not used to it, because I've never been here before. That's what feels unsafe. It's you can't be on autopilot. And that's what's really happening. The unconscious is just running on loop because it's done this for so many years. And so it feels safe because you don't have to think about it. You don't have to be consciously aware of how you're showing up. You don't have to fix or heal or show up differently. You can just be how you've always been, but that's how you get caught in the loop. I talk about this all the time. Number 7, the mother complex projection. Now, this is drawing from Carl Jung a little bit. And this is about when men can sometimes unconsciously continue searching for the mother through their romantic partners. And so they may seek women who over nurture, who are emotionally parent them, who tolerate poor behavior, who excuse emotional immaturity, and who make them feel endlessly accommodated. So again, they're not looking for partnership. They're looking for an unfinished attachment repair. They're looking for a mother through the woman that they're dating. And just spoiler alert, although I think you already know this has been happening for decades, generations. The son gets raised with the mother, then gets handed off to another woman who is expected to mother a grown man. And we've normalized it. And now we have a male loneliness epidemic, allegedly. I have thoughts on that too. But either way, it's because the women are tired of raising sons that are not their child. And this is where the whole dialogue of unconditional love can become really distorted as well. You can unconditionally love someone but not tolerate their poor and harmful behavior. There's a lot of men that talk about wanting unconditional love from their partner, usually because they received conditional love from their mother. But the unconditional love that you're actually seeking is from your mother. She's the only woman who can love you in that way. She's the only woman who can love you despite the way that you show up and continuously show up for you, because that's your mother. But when you are harmful, abusive, and unhealthy to a woman who is meant to be your partner, she does not need to stay now to prove that she is unconditionally loving of you. She can unconditionally love you from a distance, because now she's got to think about her own health and safety. And if you are the one that is creating violence and chaos and abuse, why would she stay? And lastly, and this is a big one, number 8, deep anger towards women that they cannot name. If the child was never allowed to consciously acknowledge the person who loved me hurt me, then that anger gets repressed. Often this becomes displaced later as resentment towards women, misogyny, distrust of feminine authority, inability to handle rejection, and hostility when women set boundaries. And this is because the original wound was never processed. There are a lot of men who are really mad at their moms, but they're taking it out on the women in society. And as a woman in society, I am begging you, take it back to mom. And listen, the healing work for this takes time. It's going to be uncomfortable. And sometimes you may or may not even be able to include your mother in this. That's a thing when we start healing the familial wounds, the mother and father wounds. A lot of times we can stall our healing and moving forward because we assume that the only way to do that is to get the cosign from the parent, for them to see the light, for them to take accountability, for them to apologize, for them to finally say the words that we've been waiting for them to say, but that doesn't always happen. And you can't stall your healing and your life and your ability to cultivate true connection and intimate relationships on someone else's ability to be where you need them to be. They may never get there. And so part of this work too is feeling the resentment, feeling the anger, feeling the disappointment, and then also acknowledging, depending on your situation, maybe your parent was repeating patterns that they knew or saw growing up. Maybe, and I hate saying this, and I know some of you hate it too, that they were doing the best that they could. It's not an excuse, but sometimes it is what it is. We are given what we are given with our parents. And this is why I love to implement astrology in this healing work, because we can see the karmic imprints with our lineage, with our parents, with our mother when we look at the moon sign. That's why I focus on the moon sign so much. If you are interested in learning more about your astrology and what your moon sign is telling you about your relationship with your mother, the wounds with your mother, the emotional survival strategies you learned, then grab my Dark Side of the Moon webinar. I'll link it below. It's $37. I'll show you how to pull up your birth chart and find out your moon sign. If you don't know how to do any of that, I walk you through it, and I'll give you all kinds of information and a workbook to help you start doing all of that until you're ready for a one-on-one with me. I'll link that below too. Now, again, the nervous system plays a huge role in this because the nervous system can become addicted to inconsistency. And addiction, it's hard to even know it's happening. It's like your nervous system is making you believe, I need this, but sometimes it doesn't. It's just what it's used to. So if your childhood had this really wonky dance of punishment, affection, criticism, approval, then the brain begins chasing this intermittent reward. It's very similar to these addiction cycles. And this often explains why people repeatedly choose toxic partners. They are unconsciously repeating and recreating the original emotional environment. This is also why you may be drawn to emotionally unavailable people or people who breadcrumb you, because this is what your nervous system is used to. It's like, here's a little bit of love, nothing. A little bit of love, nothing. Grand gesture, disappear. It's this chaotic roller coaster that, again, you become familiar with, and so you rationalize it. It's okay because it's what you've always experienced, not realizing it's actually unhealthy. So if you are a man who is watching this and your first experience of love taught you that the people who claim to love you and care about you can also humiliate, hurt, and destabilize you, you may spend your adulthood unconsciously searching for that same dynamic and call it chemistry. Thank you as always for watching and sharing your time with me. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Share with a friend who could really benefit from this video if anyone comes to mind. And I will see you next week.